The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we give you thanks for the gift of this night and this time together, for drawing us nearer to you through our relationships with each other. Help us in all things to seek after you and to offer those we meet a glimpse of your peace and presence in our own lives. Lord, we give you thanks for the gift of Thistle Farms in Magdalen and the ministry offered there to your children. On this evening, we ask you to be especially present to Becca as she speaks to us of her experience in ministry. Continue to bless her and bless us as we seek to follow where you lead the way. We offer this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening. My name is Harrison McLeod, and I'm the rector here at Christ Church. It is a privilege to host this event this evening. What a wonderful opportunity for our parish to gather together in holy fellowship and include friends and visitors and family. What a joyful occasion it is to hear an inspirational story of the gospel, and that's what you all are about to hear more of this evening. Becca Stevens comes to join us from Nashville, Tennessee, where she is an Episcopal priest and a mother, and I think more than a friend to some of our other guests. And so without any further explanation, I am going to turn the microphone to Anika, who works at Thistle Farms, I think is in charge of all the marketing. Is that right?
I work in PR marketing.
Worked in PR marketing, but I am supposed to give you the microphone.
Yes. I'm in charge of the mic right now.
Yeah, she's in charge of the mic.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anika, and I am a 2015 graduate of Thistle Farms residential program. And before I get started, I definitely would like to light the candle. And we light this candle every morning in the circle before we start work. And we read out of Find Your Way Home. And we light the candle believing that when we light the candle, we keep it burning for that woman that's still out there walking the streets and who's lost, for the child who's being molested for the first time and who do not know what freedom looks like. We light it for the baby born into the disease without a choice in the matter. And we light it for that woman that's in Mexico planting trees so we can have moringa tea. So this light goes a long way, and we believe that we are the light. So everybody in this auditorium, you are light today. And we're going to shine a light. And so I'm just going to tell you a brief story of my past. And I just want you to know before I get started, I'm able to stand here and tell you our story, because it's not my story. It's a universal story. I'm able to stand here and say it because I'm free today. I'm free from my past, so thank God for that. And when I was born, my mother and father was both on drugs, and so I was placed in foster care right away. And so I could remember at the age of 5 being molested and not knowing that it was wrong, and it happened on up until I was like 12. So between 5 and 12, I was in 7 different foster homes. Every last one of them, I was molested. And so I learned how to shut down and not express my feelings, not because I wanted to, because that's what I was told. In the households that I was at, you couldn't express your feelings. What stays on in the house stays, what goes on in the house stays in the house. And so at the age of 12, I was adopted, and I thought it would be different because this time I was able to call my adopted mother, mother. I had a father, I had a sister, a brother, things that I never had before. And so I thought it was going to be different. And I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and my adopted mother job moved her to Nashville. And so we went to Nashville, and if anybody know about Detroit, economic-wise, it's not too much to offer. So my mother thought she was doing a good thing by inviting her brothers to come live with her, and also it was a way for her to do more overtime while they watch her. And so it happened again. And so by this time, the age of 12 and 13, since I didn't know how to deal with my anger, I would get into a lot of fights in school. And so instead of the school system saying, what's going on, how can we help, they like, you a problem child, you can't be around the so-called normal kids, and we're going to place you in special ed. So special ed I went. And I'm thankful for being in special ed classes because that was the first time ever I heard that being molested was wrong and being touched against your will is wrong. So at the end of the school day, I went to the teacher and I said, what you was talking about, that's what I'm going through. And I've been going through it all my life, but I never was able to speak. I never had a voice. And so the police and the school system got involved. And I don't know what I was expecting from that, but I know what I got. What I received was, from my mother, was, it's your fault, you hot and you fast. So from there, I'm like, you know what, I can't take it. I couldn't take anymore. That was the breaking point. So I ran away. So at the age of 15, I ran away, hit the streets, not knowing what life was about, but I knew I had to survive, and I thought I knew I had what men like, and so I used that in order to have a place to stay and food on my table. And so then, at the age of 16, I got pregnant, and I was introduced to drugs. I didn't know the repercussions of drugs because nobody ever told me that drugs was wrong and this is the road they would lead you down. So I had to find that on my own. And so when I was introduced to drugs, I thought it was like, oh my gosh, this is the answer, because it allowed me to escape my reality. All the trauma that I went through, the drugs allowed me to escape. And so I continued to use. It led me to being homeless. I gave birth to 3 children, and I was unable to take care of them, so they was taken from me. I've been arrested 87 times. I had 5 felons. That's the road that the drugs and just my past, even before the drugs, that's the trauma that I dealt with. That's the hand that I was dealt, and so that's the road that I went down. I never knew anything about somebody loving you unconditionally. So thank God for Becca Stevens, who God placed a vision in her heart, in her spirit, and she wasn't afraid to step out on faith. And because of that, I was able to go into a community where there was nothing but love, unconditional love, no judgment. And the motto is love heals. And love has truly, truly healed me. I am not the same person. I am not what my background say. I am not what happened in my past. Today I hold my head up high because I had a community that wrapped their arms around me and said that you can do it and we believe in you. And so August the 31st, I was able to purchase, me and my boyfriend, our first home. The 3 kids that was taken from me, I'm able to have a relationship with them. And they able to come, and they have their own bedroom at my house. And so I'm so grateful that society did not give up on me. That Becca been going around way before I even came into the picture. And I'm grateful because She been lighting the light. She's been lighting the light since 1997. The light been shining. And so I was able to find light in my darkest hour. And so the products that we have out there, I know a lot of y'all been shopping, and we thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But literally, this is what it means when you purchase a product. You are breathing hope into somebody's life, into another woman's life who's being trafficked. You are allowing the 4 houses that we have to stay open without any federal or government assistance. So I thank you so much, and God bless.
I don't know who does really all the jobs here at Christ Church, but I can tell you we have never had this kind of reception. Harrison, it is a beautiful sign of hospitality. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Amy, Emily, and your whole team, this is awesome. And it's perfect because, it's still like church because nobody's on the front row. It's packed to the back. But it's like, oh my God, what if they take up an offering tonight? I love it. And we are so, so grateful. We have just about sold out of everything, so I really have nothing to say. But I will say this. I've been thinking a lot about some of the myths in our faith and what it means to cultivate a faith. And one of the first places I really want to start was with this idea of Mary and Martha, that these are 2 separate people. So you got Mary, she's at Jesus' feet, she's completely devoted, she's amazing, and the icon of Martha, she has a broom. If you ever become a saint, how many want a broom as your icon? It's like, oh, Martha. Sad, really. But that we're bred that way, and this idea that you can either be a contemplative or you can be a server. And truly, that has not been the tradition, that the reality of us together in community and in faith, that when you hear the story of Lazarus, Martha is weeping, all heart, all devotion. And Mary was scurrying around doing all she needed to do. We all carry Mary and Martha. And what we've been in our community at Magdalene and Thistle Farms is truly a community that's about a praxis of faith. What do you grow in your faith? It takes daily practice. It takes amazing devotion. There are great contemplatives that wash dishes with great prayer. There are beautiful, beautiful folks who can light a candle and then make 1,000 more for other people. That we can hold all this, and it becomes this journey of living out our faith and seeing what does it bear? So for us, what started, I'm an Episcopal priest from, 1991. And I'm meeting some old friends that I haven't seen in a long time tonight. Jennifer Faust, who was, what's that denomination called, Jennifer? Presby? Huh? Presbyterian, that's what it was. Albert Gooch, our Swanee connection, just tons of old friends. And so out of that ministry, what started as really a journey into what I thought was probably the Martha part of my ministry. We'll open an outreach house for 5 women. And the idea was, wouldn't it be great to open up something outside the judicial system, outside the penal system, outside the recovery system, and outside the religious system, and just have a sanctuary and invite 5 women in? And those of you who are here at lunch today know that we are honored today to have one of our first 5 women who is celebrating 19 years clean, Regina Mullins here, who has probably helped another 150 women come off the street. So we invited 5 women. raped early, cast out, criminalized, and left on the streets. Just come in and live 2 years free with no authority in the house. That was the model. That's how complicated it got. And that was going to be what I did as kind of the work. But what it became was the biggest gift of my life and my faith. It made it so I never had to worry about any kind of cynicism or bitterness in my ministry. It made it where I could read the Gospels and go, that's true. You can have just dirt and spit and make a healing mud. That's true. You can say a word of hope to a woman at a well and it can change a life. You can look at something 4 days dead and be inspired. And so this journey kept going, and we started this bath and body care company in 2001 because we really, really wanted the women who had been left out for so long to have a path back in for economic justice. Somebody was asking me just out there, how much percentage of the product goes back in to help the women? And I'm like, well, 100%. I mean, I don't take a salary from Thistle Farms. I don't take any money from the books you bought. That all goes back in. This is the biggest gift of my life. And I'm not just saying that. It is an honor to be a part of that community. So the money goes back in and it generates, and we buy more candle wax or bottles, and then we come out and we sell it, and we have, every year growing, and we bring new women in. We probably have 15 women who would come to work tomorrow if we had the markets for hiring them. But we, are trying to grow responsibly and respectively. So we started Thistle Farms. There was a documentary made. We started our first distribution system into Whole Foods. We wrote our own book with the women called Find Your Way Home, which talked about what are the spiritual principles we live by. And we came up with things like laugh at yourself, walk behind, find your place in the circle. Just things that are practical. This theology that is very Martha and leads you to very Mary moments. M-A-R-Y, not M-E-R-R-Y. And then since then, basically what's happened is that we have found that people really want to hope with you. That this is really a beautiful model of evangelism. That it's a model of deep faith. That it is about freedom, that we're not a residential program, that we are not just a social enterprise, that we are not just contiguous groups helping one another, that we are becoming a movement about women's freedom, that we are enabling one another to believe that we can change a culture that still buys and sells women and treats them as a commodity. And, recently, the most recent one was probably on PBS, The Path Appears. Nicholas Kristof and his team came down and said, this is a holistic model that we haven't really seen before, and we'd really like to help. And they featured several of the women in New York Times articles. We have one woman who does a lot of work with minors now for women under 18, and she does our Inside Prison program. And she was, for Mother's Day, featured in the New York Times as the world's best mom. She was first raped by by her mother's boyfriend at the age of 5. She was trafficked all over the U.S. and says in her own words she was duct taped and thrown in the Salt Lake. She was dancing with snakes. She was in a bad, bad space. She came to Nashville, came into recovery, got breast cancer the same month, and she said it saved her life. That when she got breast cancer, all her hair fell out, and she finally saw the road map on her head of all the violence that had been done, and how somebody would split her head open and she would go just be able to wash it in cold water until it quit bleeding. No one would take her anywhere. And she found love, and she got married. She had 2 children. She went back to the university and got a degree in psychology. She has done so much And then what's happened is we have started all these organizations to work with women's groups around the globe. And we've started going out on the road saying, we're not just going to have 5 houses, not 4. We have 5, right? Or 6. We have, okay, yeah, if you can, yes, we have 6, but one of them is inside the prison. So it's 5 and then 6 inside the prison. But that we're going to go open houses around the country, and we're going to help this journey. So that's kind of the timeline and where we are, and we continue to grow in an exponential way. But really, it started for us in a circle. It actually started at Vanderbilt University. That was the first place we had a circle, and that's our facility now, and that's how fancy we are. You can see we have chairs for about 1 out of every 3 people. And that's the candle we light, just to give you the image of what Anika's talking about. But for me, it really started with the idea of the thistle. When I first went out to the streets and started meeting the women that were walking and living on the streets, everywhere we go, we saw thistle. Y'all know thistle, right? Yes? Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear y'all. Yes. And thistles have this amazing history of survival by brutality, and it's in the places that are unkempt and uncultivated that you see these noxious weeds growing. And so it made sense to us to make a fun, fancy name and call our company Thistle Farms. And if you went down to the alleys, there were thistles. When you went to the prison, and all that could grow inside the chain link fence that they couldn't cut were thistles. We didn't do anything with them. They're awful. We just called the company that. And so then we said farms, meaning something that grows, that we're going to cultivate. My head is so tiny that this thing is not staying on. That we are going to cultivate women, and we're going to grow women. So the farm became this place of growth. And we brought herbs, and we went to farms, and we actually had an acre of lavender, and we worked together. So about 8 or 9 years into it, we were working hard, and it was like, we have to do something with the thistle. Now, what can you do with the damn thistle? It's awful. And all of a sudden, we realized that you could take the down of the thistle and make a beautiful paper, that it's silk, and it's amazing. So we started making boxes, and the very first place we went was All Saints Church in Atlanta. And we brought boxes down, and we were selling. This is honest to God truth. This is how beautiful, beautiful communities are. We were selling healing oils inside a thistle box for $75. And people bought them. We felt so bad we quit doing it. But it was like, you really, really should not spend $75 on a paper box made of thistles. But at the beginning, I felt really good about it because I thought they were collector's items, but we sold out. So we went to Atlanta and we sold out. And so I was going out on the streets of Nashville a few years ago, desperately seeking thistles in January because we wanted to make more boxes. Nowhere. I couldn't find them. Go out into the country, and there was a place that the Tennessee Department of Transportation had not mowed down by the side of the road. And I was like, oh, there's a whole field of thistle. You can imagine how much that was worth. So I pull over on the side of the road, got my Kroger bag out, my little shopping bag, and I'm like hunched over picking thistle, and this poor man drives by. And he looks at me like, oh. There is the middle-aged crazy woman who has lost her mind. And I was like, I'm fine, you can go, I'm fine. And he left, and I was laughing. I was laughing at seeing myself as, and I'm being generous to myself, a middle-aged priest out in the middle of the day picking half-dead thistle. And it dawned on me that I had actually become a thistle farmer. That this idea I had in theory had become a practice, and I had become this thing. Now, mind you, you cannot imagine a lower thing to be in this world than a thistle farmer. And I just wept with gratitude. I can't even tell you what it means to have been on a road where you know brokenness, you know poverty, you've messed up 100 times, you've been offered grace, and you've gone down all these side roads, and you find somehow you have been blessed enough to see a half-dead field of thistle as incredibly valuable. If you can see that as beautiful, can you imagine how beautiful this world is? Can you imagine how beautiful you are? When you're a thistle farmer, there is nothing in all creation that needs to be condemned or left behind. There is no country, I'm telling you, no country we have traveled to that we have not been able to harvest thistle. The whole world is your farm. And anywhere you go and you see thistle like that, and you go to pick it, nobody says, "Don't pick my thistle." They go, "Oh my gosh, I have more thistle over here if you would like to pick some more." Thistle picking is the perfect youth activity once. You can get any youth group in the whole United States of America to go out picking once. And then once they get chiggers and ticks and cicadas and everything else, they're like, "I'm good. I've picked thistle." It's the great equalizer, and it reminds us that you and I, as the Marys and Marthas, practicing our theology in the world, we don't have to go to the mall. We can go behind the mall and find something beautiful. We can go out to the railroad tracks. We can go to places that we had thought we would never go. Can't go there. There is no grace there. And find something amazing, because I'm telling you the truth that thistles, they do have a prickly outside, but they have an amazingly soft center. And even Solomon in his glory are not arrayed like one of these. And when you consider the thistle, you can consider all of humanity and all of the grace that lives in every person, and how we don't have to give up on each other, and we can help one another. One of the first groups that called us to come help them, when you start a social enterprise and when you begin to have success, and we have now become the largest social enterprise in America run by survivors. It is so weird. Nobody claps. Nobody says anything. That's so sweet. Oh, stop. No, but y'all are quiet. Is that okay? Are y'all okay? Everybody's okay? Okay. If anybody's mad at me, Anika wrote this speech. It is amazing. It's amazing to start in the middle of a university campus selling a few candles and growing to the largest social enterprise in the U.S. run by survivors, and having people call and say, "Can you help us?" And you're like, "We can try." I don't know, Harrison, I don't know how many business courses you got in seminary. Yeah, that's how many I got, the big egg. They call us from Rwanda. All those women were farmers before the genocide in 1994, where 1 million people were killed in 100 days. And this first time we went was 2008. And this is a picture from last summer, 2014. That's my husband and my 3 children, and that's Nicholas Hitimana, who is the director of the program and also a survivor of the genocide, who escaped with his wife and baby. They went to Scotland. He got his PhD, where insects and plants interact. He felt called to go back to Rwanda, and he went back and he met these farmers. So the women went back into the fields where they had been raped, where they dug up the bones of their children and they planted healing herbs. They planted geranium, they planted eucalyptus, the eucalyptus was around it, and they planted lemongrass and patchouli, which, as much as you might hate patchouli, it's having a huge comeback, just FYI. Huh? You love patchouli. It's very particular, isn't it? So you smoked pot. She didn't inhale. I heard she didn't exhale. Okay, none of that was the point, by the way. We went and we met the women and we fell in love. They have built 35 houses, and the women formed a cooperative together called Ikarizi the Pearl. And they said, we can grow this geranium oil. And what's amazing about it, given Nicholas's background, is it's an amazing bug repellent. Rose geranium. And in fact, this past year, we've gone back several times, but this past time we made a commitment to sell 10,000 bottles of this. So we sent it to Patagonia. Patagonia sent it to all their fishermen. They call them ambassador fishermen. They're from Canada down to Argentina, and they got 100% report back that this was effective, they love it, and next year they're taking it up as one of their causes, as one of the best all-natural mosquito repellents that you can get. But when we got there and met the women, they were working, I'm talking about like working like foot pumps. They do like this, and one person holds the hose. So you're pumping water from the river by foot, and the other person is watering the fields. I mean, they are amazing women. And we're like, we're going to sell this stuff. I'm with you. We took it all over the country. We went in to do prison work, and we were telling their story. We got to one prison in August in Houston, Texas, and it has no air conditioning. And the women work in turnip fields. It's pretty awful, and we come in these prisons, and just like tonight, to talk about how women come together to heal and how we can hope together. We tell that same story in prison. We passed out all our information, and the woman in the front row, and you can imagine the smell. It was probably the same amount of people, but 1/3 the space, with no air, 100 and something degrees. Everybody smelled like turnips. The guards are on horseback, so there's manure mixed in there too. The woman takes our handout, just puts it over her face and says, "What is that smell?" And some of the geranium had dripped into the papers, which means in my mind, what happened was that a group of women in the middle of Rwanda who survived a genocide, mind you, went back out into the fields and said, we want to be healers. We want to heal our communities. That geranium oil that they cultivated and made its way to Nashville, Tennessee, where another group of women who for too long have been on the outside of community and left for dead, blended it into a healing product, stamped Love Heals on it, then it went on an airplane, and then a drop of it made its way through a prison wall so that a woman who was ready to breathe in the fragrance of healing could breathe it in. When I saw the whole thing unfold, I knew for sure that if a drop of oil can do that, we can make a difference. We can do this. If all of us are adding these small drops here and there in this journey, that we are a powerful healing entity. We just have to remember how love heals and how it works in our lives. And so we've been, what happened? Tim? No. Make it go. Yeah. I already punched it 10 times. But, so what happened is, out of that experience and out of knowing that we started partnering with a lot of groups and started making healing oils in every variety. And this is an image from Thistle Farms of us taking those drops and making vials of healing oils and beginning to distribute them. And how that works, and you can see that we wear... women are just daily doing these tasks. It's such a Martha task, right? To take this beautiful Mary moment and to do that task. That was fun. Go ahead. Thank you. So we went back to Rwanda recently, and they said, okay, great, you're selling a whole bunch of stuff. Did y'all ever read the book, Give a Mouse a Cookie? And if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to want a cup of milk and then come in your house and That's basically what's happened for all this work. You know, you listen to a woman's story, I didn't touch it. You listen to a woman's story, and truly it is, people want to then get a job, they want a house to live in, they want to get better, they want to reconcile with their kids, they want to come back to the courts. And the same thing is true in Rwanda. Say, great, you're selling this product now everywhere. You've 10 times more than you sold last year, you're selling this year. And we now need cows. So we then had a fundraiser, and we had the cow ceremony of the naming ceremony, because not only do they use the cows for manure, but now they put the dung to heat the distillation system. What is it? What were you saying?
Dung works.
Do you want me to say something else?
No, I was saying dung.
Oh, yes. And it heats up the water to make the steam, to make the oils. So now those 8 cows, we've already, and it's been literally like 8 months, they have 3 babies, and they're working hard to hopefully buy a whole nother farm and increase the production. The women have brought nieces, nephews, surviving children, cousins, communities together. It's been this beautiful reconciling work. So this is where we are in the world now. These are the 19 shared trade partners, and it follows the places where there has been trafficking. It follows a lot of groups that have been doing beautiful work but have had no access to economic leverage enough to compete in the marketplace. Does that make sense? If you don't have a little Martha in you to your Mary, good luck testing your values out in the world. You know, for us, it became a journey of saying, we are definitely going to figure out how to make this work for a lot of women who have been shut out for too long, which means that we have to figure out, like if we're selling to Whole Foods, how to get down our margins below 50% to be able to sell it at wholesale, right? Which means you have to order huge quantities, and you have to have distribution systems, and you have to be able to provide the product when people want it in the right quantity and quality. So we've been working with every one of these women's groups, and it's like, okay, that's great, and it looks like an after-school program of people that sewed something together. What you need to do is be able to make 500 exactly the same thing, so we can put it on the website. And we have to find the channels to do all the shipping. And we have to figure out a way where the women are going to make a living wage where they are and go beyond fair trade into share trade. And it's commitment from every organization in this network to at least offer 10% higher than what they were paying before to every individual producer of what they have. And what's happened is that now, if you want to help women who are survivors in India and survivors in northern Kenya and survivors in Ecuador and survivors in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you can go on one website. And what we do is we got a grant last November to do a huge purchase. And so we have all the products sitting in the warehouse in Nashville, Tennessee, and we can ship it all at once. And we don't charge anything for that distribution. And that way, all the money can go back into those programs. So it's all paid to not-for-profits back that are working with survivors. And so that's how the network works. That's how we remember that it's a non-competitive sport, this work that we're doing. That's how women make their ways back into communities, back to their children, back to a place where they remember they are beautiful and worthy, and Mary and Martha as well as everybody else. Yay! I know, I just want to see. So, when Anika was telling the story about the candle, I really wanted to highlight Ty. And Ty is a woman who comes, oh Lord. She comes from that place where the vulnerability of poverty and addiction in your family leads to great violence in your life. And She spent her middle school, her first 2 years of middle school before she dropped out of middle school, hiding in a closet from her stepfather. And when that didn't work, she left. She went to the street. She was a victim long before she was a criminal. And she said when people were trying to figure out what to get for prom, she was selling herself, and she was dealing drugs, she was prostituting, she had been trafficked by the very first person she hit the streets and who picked her up. She was arrested, she served a long time in and out of prison. She was released, and she came to us. And we asked the question, what happened? And she began to tell the story. We welcomed her in. She became our first full-time candle maker, our very first full-time candle maker. And then there was one charge left on her record. It was in Columbia, Tennessee. We have a great relationship with the district attorney's office in Nashville. We provide services for women who are arrested and work in conjunction with them as a gift. We don't take any money from them. We are best friends with the chief of police. We are well suited. And I say all that because I'm fixing to tell a mean story about a DA. So I don't want you to think I think that. This DA in particular was mean. And so we went to testify on her behalf on this last charge. She's come out of prison. She's living at Magdalene, doing her work, becoming a candle maker. They call her back in. We go and testify in the court. And we say, we don't take a penny from the state. She's doing great work. She's making a paycheck. She's giving money back to the community. If you let her keep going, if she does anything, arrest her. But if not, she's giving back to the community. She is safer. We are all safer by Ty continuing to heal and get better. So the DA says to me, and I'm on the stand, now I hate to quote scripture to a priest, but Caesar gets his due. And I was like, well, don't worry, you haven't quoted scripture to a priest. You've misquoted scripture to a priest. And that wasn't really the point of that gospel. And they sentenced her to 14 more years. So she left us and she went back to prison. And she stayed there for 3 years and a couple months. She came back out a little bit over a year ago, and she walked into Thistle Farms, and on the first day she started making candles again. Well, I couldn't figure out how she did that. I could not figure out how she did it, how she kept that attitude for over 3 more years in prison, just biding her time, waiting for the healing to continue, waiting to be reconciled with her family remnants. I would have been mad. I would have been bitter. I would have used, honestly. I was like, Ty, how did you do it? How did you do it? She said, this is the first time I ever went to prison with a community. I didn't go by myself. I went with a whole community of women, and I had money on my commissary card, and people wrote me letters, and I had visitors, and I had people advocating for me. The guards were nice to me because y'all were nice to the guards. It was a different story. That's who makes her candles, and now she has trained 2 other women who have come in since her to be full-time candle makers. We are now gone from 1 to 3 candle makers.
All right.
Stop doing that. That's the newest candle they've done. So this is the growth that we have, and this is, I never understand these. But that is the total sales this past year, so you can see that the share trade we've only been selling for 6 months, has brought in almost $100,000. That the Thistle Stop Cafe in its first full year of operation brought in almost $300,000. We sold $1.3 million in sales, so we were able to generate $1.687 million in sales. And that And that shows the whole savings back to national. We talked a little bit about that at lunch today, how we divvy that up and how we remember that in our work and in our daily practice. When I was talking about what does it mean to cultivate a faith that grows something, you really grow something. You're not just healing one person or a subculture of women. You are healing a whole community. And this is evidence of it. And so long we always think about like, okay, this is what we get, and then this is what we give. And for me, I have learned that in all the giving and receiving of this work, I don't even know when I'm giving and receiving sometimes. I just know that in the exchange that God is present. And so we keep growing and we keep cultivating and we keep going out into these fields. There have been years when it's not been this good, by the way. There have been stories when it is not that good and still love grows. For me, and I don't know about for you, but those moments of inspiration and the moments of ministry that so many of you do so beautifully, there are times when you get scared it's not going well. And one of the times for me that I've learned, I love showing grass and when it goes really well. I love that part. And I love saying that 80% of the women are clean and sober that come in. The 20% is much harder. In those places where you haven't grown and it hasn't gone really well. And when NPR did their first story, the first story on us, it went really bad. It was one of the worst tragedies we had ever had. I mean, we had women who had relapsed. We had women who had gone back out to the streets. But we had a woman that really was struggling. They wanted to interview somebody that was struggling. She had gone back out to the streets, and at that time, and she wasn't convicted of it, but at that time she was arrested for being a part of a homicide. So you can imagine, as a pastor that raises their money by working with a group of women and telling inspiring stories about how people heal, how bad news that was. And that was what was going to go on national radio. The one woman that was struggling was going to be on it. I was like, this is going to be the end of us. This is when we're going to shut down, when people know that it's not all a bed of roses that we are cultivating. And I called NPR and I spoke to the board of directors in the board of directors room and begged them to pull the story. And in my mind, what I thought is if you had a small group of people in our community of Nashville, we could handle that news and we could still love each other. But the general community that doesn't know us are going to go see. You see what I'm talking about? That's why you don't want to put your money in that stuff. Do you see women don't change? Do you see churches don't have any business in these horrible billion-dollar industries that are super powerful? They can't help it. Becca Stevens does not know what she is doing. All those voices were in my head when that story hit. And after that story hit, it was a different ballgame. How many people called and wept with us, and how many people wanted to be on the journey with us. And I realized, for me at least, that the biggest block to cultivating my faith were those voices that happened to all live inside my head and were my own. That was all about me. My fears, my problems, my brokenness, my worries. I was judgmental, I felt bad about myself, and I wanted people just to really love us for all we did. Since then, we have been able to bury women with great dignity and respect who didn't make it, with no shame, and to be able to tell that story too. We have identified women by the sleeves, the tattoo sleeves, because they were beaten so bad in hotel rooms in New York. And we can hear love being preached in that. That in this world, sometimes when there is nothing else, love fills a space and keeps us on the track and keeps us together and helps make us stronger to continue to grow. And when you get to that place, for you and me on those days where fear doesn't get the last word, it is powerful. Stop it. Why did I bring a Baptist with me? I love you, Regina. The last place we went into prison was Arkansas, so I wanted to send you a picture from the prison in Arkansas. This is probably 2 or 3 months ago, is that right? 2 or 3 months ago, and they've just opened a house across the street from the prison where the women are going to come out. So part of our networking and how we do this work is we meet people, a few of those folks become interested, they come to Nashville, they learn more about it, they decide to develop a community with us. This happened, do you know Lowell in Fayetteville, Arkansas? He's amazing. This is the prison, literally like 3 blocks down. What's the name of the church, Tim? It doesn't matter. It does matter, but I'm just going blank right this second. So what they had planned for us when we went to prison is the women had been working on telling their stories. And they lined up and they come in there. And the warden took this picture for me. You know, they take your camera when you get in there. But I was like, I need a picture. And he said, okay. But as long as it's just the backs, that's what he said. So he took a picture. They're all wearing yellow, and they file down in a yellow line and come sit in seats. They had all written their stories, and they had 5 folks who were the readers, and they basically told one story. It was the beginning, the leaving the home, the trafficking, the addiction, the prostitution, and the jail, and what they hope for when they come out. And it was this blended, beautiful story they told. That was fine. I could hear all the story. I'd heard some of it before. It was heartbreaking and beautiful, as all stories are that we honor. And they get to the end about what they hope. Now you can imagine what 100 women in the jail in Fayetteville, Arkansas wrote. You can imagine. The line between priest and prostitute is very thin. The line between you and Anika is very thin. The line between the women in prison and you sitting here in Greenville is very thin. We know what they were hoping. Reconciliation with their children. Financial stability. They want to forgive their families. They want their families to forgive them. They want a house. They want meaningful work. They want to go back to school. The same things. They just happen to be in yellow outfits sitting in jail hoping for that. And we were able to begin to remind them that the first step of that, crazily enough, is forgiveness. That is what unleashes the chains that keep holding us down for so long. It will never be fair. It will never be fair. If somebody at the Magdalene program says, well, that's not fair, you go, oh, hell no, it's not fair. Obviously, it is not fair. Okay. When I was little and I said, it's not fair, my mama used to say, who promised you fair? Who promised you fair? And sometimes that works really well for you. So sometimes when they're saying it's not fair, it means we've done something really nice for somebody. Sometimes it means it didn't go well, but sometimes it means it went really nice. And so what we begin with is the idea of we have to be free of all that. We have to know forgiveness to grow. We have to know forgiveness. This is a picture when we went to our first convention. Most of the biggest sales day we ever had in the history of Thistle Farms and Magdalene happened this summer at Salt Lake City at the Episcopal General Convention. We sold $23,000 worth of products in about 4 hours. But more, what it does is it introduces communities to women who are survivors. It changes how people see our products. It makes them want to buy them and put them in their businesses and put them on their shelves and help grow this movement. And it's been really the most effective way that we've been able to be together and to sell the products. And that's just a picture, I think that's at the ECLA conference. And we started off, it is a loaves and fishes theology, and that really is what a farming theology is. You know, we sell when there's 20 people showing up. We sell when there's 300 people showing up. God bless y'all for showing up. And it's this idea that we start with so little, and there's so much that grows and happens around that. That $1, like, it feels like it multiplies over and over. It helps Thistle Farms, it helps the women, it helps their children, it helps grow new programs in new places where we go back out and help them raise money. I have loved dirt my whole life. I've loved growing things. I've loved being in dirt. I have been mesmerized by all of it. I love the stories in the gospel about dirt, that while Jerusalem is still occupied by a foreign nation, Jesus talks about dirt and seed and growing ad nauseum in the Gospel of Matthew. As if there's no current events that he needs to talk to. He'd much rather talk about the dirt and uncovering it and what's inside you. What is the dirt of your life? And I believe in that gospel story when he was talking about seed falling on rocky soil and barren soil and rich soil. That's all that dirt is in us, all that dirt. It's not like you got the really good fertile soil and you got the parched soil. That we all have that stuff. And he is interested in turning that soil, turning that ground over and over, even though we may weep, so that we can plant new seeds and have new things grow in us and through us that is a witness to this world. It's not so much stating the obvious about what are the problems in the world and looking at all the statistics, which are amazing, especially around the issues of human trafficking, but looking at what is in us that we need to cultivate again, in the dirt of us. What is in you and what is in me that needs to be stirred up again to grow new seed? To plant something new and beautiful that will grow. That's the calling and that's the hope of this work, is that it's not just about one group, but about all of us growing it together and being well together and seeing the amazing things that can happen. One thistle can produce 1,000 thistles in a season. One drop of oil can make its way from Rwanda, from the fields of genocide, into a prison. One candle can cut a path from the darkest night to the dawn. We have a drop of oil. We have a candle. We have light, and we have dirt, and we have thistle. We can do amazing things together. Thank you.
Lord be with you. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we continue to give you thanks for the inspiration that you offer us in the work that you invite us to share. Help us in all things to serve you by serving each other. Help us to live more fully into our baptismal covenant, to respect the dignity of every human being. Help us to seek you in all that we do and all that we say. And Lord, as we leave this place, keep us all safe this evening. And in all things, draw us closer to each other as you draw us closer to yourself through your Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we offer these and all our prayers. Amen. Becca will be at the table out front if you'd like to introduce yourself to her or ask a question, or I'm sure buy whatever products are left over.